Today, have a conversation with Natasha Shirazi. Since we're still having conversations in the spirit of handling difficult conversations, let me share a few brief thoughts with you before we have Natasha on board. No one likes to tackle a difficult conversation, but if you plan to be a leader in business, you need to learn how to do it effectively. We all know what happens when we face one of these talks. We either put it off or find an excuse to avoid it. We try to convince ourselves that we can ignore the problem, but it never works. And delaying the inevitable only makes it tougher when you finally do it. With the right strategies, you make difficult conversations manageable, less stressful, and improve outcomes. Uh, and how can you gain these skills? This is through constant interaction with our speakers and our mentors until the month of September. For you restarters to be able to take some value and to make a difference in your lives, to have that conversation either with family or with friends, with employers, with anyone in your ecosystem that will help you break barriers and have a difficult conversation confidently. So, in this talk with Natasha, we will learn and we will discover how to prepare for your difficult conversation using proven techniques. We provide constructive criticism without creating conflict. How do we confront problems directly and professionally? And how do we deliver feedback and avoid backlash? After we've had the conversation. Welcome, Natasha. So I was just giving a little brief to all our participants about difficult conversations, especially for women in tech. Would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yes. Hi, team. Good afternoon. Apologies for the late login. My name is Natasha Shirazi. I've been with Dell for 11 and a half years, a total of about 23 years of work experience. Worked in mobile telephony and now, of course, in IT. And I hope we can have an engaging conversation and I hope we can all learn together. Thank you.
So, Natasha, would you like to start by sharing your presentation with us?
Yes.
Yeah, and then you can just take us through your presentation and, as and when people have questions, they'll post it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah? Super.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So if you all can tell me whether you can view my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect.
I'll speak to them, I'll view to them so that you can.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so good afternoon. Difficult conversations. Let's start with basically what is a difficult conversation? And I think I was struggling to try and explain what a difficult conversation is, and then Google, as usual, came to the rescue. I put in a lot of search words and a lot of different criteria, and I think it didn't got explained very simply. If it's challenging for at least one person involved, it's difficult. And I think that basically covers it in as simple as I could explain it. And what I want to kind of then run you through is that what are the 2-3 things about a difficult conversation, and then hopefully open it up more for question and answers, and hopefully for some kind of level of engagement where we can either discuss certain things on call, or we can even discuss things one-on-one. You can always reach out to me through LinkedIn. A difficult conversation could be subjective, and I think this is one of the biggest concerns and the biggest call-outs when you're having a conversation with someone, is that most often than not, it's subjective, and that's not how it should be. It should be objective. Don't ever get into a conversation with anyone where you're talking subjectively about that person, about a situation, and you're making it personal. So in simple terms, it should not be subjective, it should be objective. They should be very clear. Yes?
Yeah, sorry, Natasha, for interrupting. Could you just give us an example of being subjective and objective, please?
So subjective is it could be, I don't like you. It could be, when we were talking about things, I didn't like the way you raised your voice. It's getting a lot more personal. An objective conversation is the situation. You're discussing the process. You're discussing what about your behavior did not lead to a productive conversation or did not lead to a productive situation. So it's stepping away from the situation and away from the person and trying to analyze why that person reacted the way they did, rather than say, you made a mistake, I don't like you, and walk away. It just becomes very limited in scope. Does that clarify?
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Natasha. You could continue,
Perfect.
please.
Yeah. Have that conversation. And I think another thing is about a difficult conversation or a conversation that's hard is that have it. We always shy away from having difficult conversations. We shy away from bringing them up, saying, why should I raise an issue? It doesn't matter. I can learn to work around it. I can learn to survive, and it'll all fall in place. And eventually, it doesn't matter. But I think one of the things that we all need to realize is that if we avoid a difficult conversation, we actually looking at short-term benefit over long-term benefit. So try and understand. For example, if there's a problem with, and this is just an example, and I'll give you the simplest example. I can't come to work every day at 9 o'clock. And now my point is that, do I work around how I come work at 9 o'clock? Yes. Do I make sure my boss knows about it? Is my boss the one who can control that, or is my home life the one that can control that? How do I make sure I discuss it with the relevant parties who are getting impacted by the fact that I have to go to work at 9 o'clock? And I would rather have that conversation with the people who are impacted than to think, let me adjust and let me try and manage for as long as I can till suddenly someone realizes I'm not able to manage. Because when I leave for work early, I'm not able to manage the home. And the days I don't come to work at 9 o'clock, my boss is not happy. So the whole point is, have the conversation. Make sure you're reaching out to the people who are impacted, or the people who are who are able to impact your decision to either help you. And 9 times out of 10, I find when you reach out to the people and ask them and tell them that this is the concern, they give you solutions to work around. So have the conversation. Don't hesitate from having that conversation. Right? And I think that kind of very clearly takes me to the next part, where if when you're having this conversation, there are two roles that you can play. One is when you are having the conversation with somebody that's slightly difficult, very difficult, or just moderately difficult. You can decide depending on how it is. But I think there are a few thumb rules that we can follow. And those would be, one is stay grounded when you're having that conversation. For example, remember that this is it's either going to give rise to a conflict, or it's already a conflict. But there is no solution, or there's no problem that cannot be solved, because at the end of the day, there are two consenting adults sitting across a room and discussing what the problem is, what is the situation, why is it arisen, and who is getting impacted the most. So stay very grounded, stay very objective. And again, it comes back to being objective about the conversation that you're going to have, or about the situation or the problem. Be prepared. I think this is extremely important. Don't wake up in the morning and say, okay, today is enough. I've had it, and I'm just going to go and talk to my boss, or I'm just going to go and talk to my friends, or I'm just going to go and talk to my family. It doesn't happen like that. You have to be prepared. You have to think about what is it that you're trying to achieve. You have to think about what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve. So what happens is, when you prepare and you kind of analyze and you are calm, the conversation flows better. You're a lot more logical. You have a lot more reasons. And then you're able to think, okay, if I say this and this is the answer I get, what do I do then? Try and see what the other person could or should say or would say, and try and work out different solutions. Now, the conversation might not happen where it gives you a solution, but the fact that you're prepared and the fact that you have counter reasons for whatever position you're stating helps the other person realize that you're meeting midway. It's not just you walking into a room emotionally upset, or just because at that particular time it was the worst day of your life, you had bad traffic, and you come in and say, okay, now let me go and vent my frustrations. It doesn't work like that, right? Also, seek to understand. When you're having the conversation with somebody, or you're going to put a situation across to that person where you are initiating the difficult conversation, seek to understand what is the reason for you to have that conversation. What is the situation that has led to that? Try and understand. I always say, people don't just wake up one morning and decide to be decide to be difficult or decide to be different. There is a reason behind it. There might be a business need, there might be a family emergency, But my point is, if you understand both, then it becomes easier. If you understand why that conversation has to happen, what is the motivation behind that conversation, right? I also think when you're planning for a conversation where it's going to be a little tough, is create a plan in your mind at least. Try and imagine the situation in your mind and say, listen, I'm going in to ask for something. I'm going in because I need it. I'm going in because I want it. The reason that I need it and want it is very clear in my mind. But what is the plan to achieve it? Is it going to be a big change for the organization, or is it going to be a big change for you personally? Is it going to be a change where your working hours change? Is it going to be a change where there are certain things that are not within your control? How do you plan around it? How do you plan with it? So create this in your mind first, and then with the person that you're having the conversation with, also share that plan, so that what happens then, it becomes a lot more collaborative. You're going to the person saying, I have this situation, this is how I think I can overcome it, this is where I need help, what do you think we should do? These are my ideas, where do you think you can help? So what happens, again, it becomes a conversation. A conversation is between two people where you're both engaging, you're both interacting. It's extremely important. uh, I also think you should avoid backing yourself into a corner. And this is an example of this is, don't make statements that you can't retract. First of all, don't make statements that are, like it's like a written in stone. Always keep options open. And again, this all leads to being collaborative. It all leads to a reasoning. It all leads to trying to understand the situation. So give options. Be able to say that, okay, if I have an option one and option two, option one I can compromise, but option two I can't. Now, again, when you're having this conversation with someone and you're giving a person options and you're telling them that what you can compromise and can't compromise on, the person sitting across from you realizes that you're making an effort. And instead of saying, I'm sorry, but this is all I can do, take it or leave it. 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you to leave it. What do you do then? You have to backtrack. It just doesn't make sense. It becomes messy. So go in with an open mind, go in with open options, right? I also think, and like I said, talking about options, it's extremely important. First of all, what are your options? You first understand them. I think put them on the table, write them down, realize where do they work, where do they not work, why they work in a particular way, what are the situations behind it, or what are the reasonings behind it. And I think that will help you have a conversation with someone, whoever they might be. So just to recap, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to shout out. I think stay grounded, be prepared, seek to understand, create a plan, avoid backing yourself into a corner, right? And of course, explore options. If you have these 3-4 steps, and even if you don't do all of them, I think practice unfortunately makes perfect. If I tell you I'm an expert at difficult conversations, I am 100% not being completely honest. I think most of it is that the more practice you have and the more prepared you are for some conversations, and then after you've had a conversation, you come back and say, gosh, what could I have done better? Why did I react this way? Maybe I shouldn't have said it that way. Maybe my tone should have been different. I think it all matters. So don't think of a difficult conversation as just something you have and you forget about. Try and learn from it, right? And this is when you are either having the conversation or you're at the receiving end of the conversation. So any questions on this before I go to my next slide? Any call outs on something that might not have made sense or does not resonate with any of you all? Okay, so I will take silence as acceptance. I think the second part of my thing is when you're on the receiving end. So my previous slide, yes, was there someone who wanted to share something? Okay. So my previous slide is when you are initiating the conversation, when you are the leader of the conversation in a way. Put yourself in the other foot. You are going to be hearing a difficult conversation. Now, it's difficult because the message might not be what you want to hear. It's difficult because it might not be being said at the right time in your day or in your life for that matter. But I think you have to still be very clear. First of all, listen. And this is a challenge for, I think, all of us, whether the conversation is difficult or easy. There's a saying that, people listen to answer, whereas I think you should listen to understand. And a lot of people who engage with me sometimes think I listen to answer a lot faster than I listen to understand. So I think you need to pause. You need to, the person who's initiating the conversation with you, hopefully if he's prepared and if he's calm and if he's giving out facts and figures and he's telling you things that why it works or why it doesn't work, listen to what they are saying. Don't react, because 9 times out of 10, the first time you react, you're not reacting after listening because you're answering. So listen, understand, right? The second thing is clarify certain points or certain conversations or certain processes or certain scenarios that they're mentioning. There's no harm in clarifying. Why do they think that? Why did they say that? Or why are they bringing that to your attention? The more information you ask, which again leads to the understanding process, right? And then, of course, try and understand where they are coming from. Again, it's a two-way street. You cannot have a conversation. You cannot have any conversation where one or the other is not listening, where one or the other is not clarifying, where one or the other is not understanding. So I think for a difficult conversation, these three things are what I find are most important. If you ask me, which do I fail at sometimes, depending on the situation and the emotion, 9 times out of 10, it's always the listening part. Because we straight away get so defensive. We get so, I did nothing wrong. Why do you think that? But I think these are things you need to practice when you're at the receiving end of a difficult conversation. So actually, this is all I had from a slide perspective. I would like to now understand from anyone on the call is that where do you all face any specific questions you all want to ask, or is there any specific situation which you all can share? Or if there are additional insights you think I might have missed, keeping in mind scenarios that you all have faced.
You can also text them to us right away on the chat, please.
I think so. Hopefully, while you're thinking of questions to ask, maybe what I can also share with you is what are the difficult conversations that you can have at work? I think the difficult conversations from the home front I will leave to hopefully if you'll have a specific scenario you can give me, because it becomes very difficult to be objective about those. But I think from a work point of view, as a woman, what are the difficult conversations I've had? To be very honest, I think to some extent, one of the difficult conversations was, why should I hire you? You might get married. And I was like, you should hire me. I am going to get married. It doesn't matter. I think that's something that you have to understand. People are going to ask you, how do you react to that question? And I can assure you, I think my first job interview, I might not have reacted very well because I honestly had no experience. But I think by the time I reached my third job, it was where, yes, I am going to get married. I'm going to have a family. But I'm also committed to work, support my family, and I have to support myself. So it's something that I'm going to balance. It's something that I'm aware of. And I have had a very self-fulfilling conversation with myself of where I'm going to prioritize what, where there will be no compromising. But yes, sometimes priorities will be family versus home, and sometimes family, home versus office. So as long as I'm clear in that and I'm able to articulate that to somebody, I think there's no harm in keeping those priorities very clear. Because at the end of the day, do they have the right to ask that question? I really don't know, but sometimes they do. Yes?
Natasha, we have a question here. Someone has sent in a question. Can I interrupt you and ask you now?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so they say, how do you negotiate salary with an employer, especially when restarting after a break? It's been toughest one to crack thus far.
Okay, that is a difficult conversation. In fact, salary was going to be the next one of how do you negotiate? How do you even, in fact, ask for a raise? Okay, so I think, first of all, level set yourself. Go with information. Be prepared. You know what your last salary was. You know what your work experience was. First of all, Google. Go on Google saying what are the current salaries for this particular work, for this particular experience from an educational point of view. In this particular job, if you have 5 years of experience, what is the salaries? Ask people very, very pointedly. Don't ask people who are friends of yours, because 9 times out of 10, they will not share with you. But if you can have conversations with people saying, listen, what is the current range of salaries for a person with 3 years of experience versus 4 years of experience, right? You also have to be realistic enough to realize that a break, and I've had this conversation multiple times with multiple women, is that you've been on a break, your skill set has not really depleted. Maybe your technical skill set has, but I think managing, managing home, multitasking, these are all still skill sets you have. So I think you need to also play on that, and then go with a starting. What do you expect? Don't undersell yourself. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes all of us make, is we ask for less thinking we'll get more. It doesn't work. Ask for more. You might just get a little less than the more, but it's still better than asking for less and getting less. I don't know if that answers your question.
Is someone trying to ask a question?
Do you want me to stop sharing the screen, then I'll be able to see everyone? Will that be better?
Yes.
I think there's one question in the chat. Is that the one that you asked?
Okay. So Natasha, I have a... Sorry?
Mm-hmm. No, there's one question. Yeah, there's one question on chat saying, how do I give instant answers during the interview?
Okay.
I failed to organize the content in right order, so unable to clear the interview. How to overcome this?
Okay.
An interview is not a difficult conversation. It's a tough conversation. And I think you have to, again, be prepared. Be very clear in your own strengths. Be very clear in your deliverables. Please understand, when you're going for a job interview, someone wants you to articulate how you best suit that job, how you will work best according to yourself. So depending on which company you're going to, depending on which organization you're going to, first of all, and also depending on the job that you're applying for. If you're applying for a sales job, you need to know how to sell. You need to be able to articulate it very well. So practice. Write down the questions that you think an interviewer will ask. And I kid you not, there are brilliant questions on Google that you can actually learn and understand, and don't mug them, please. But just gives you a grounding, right? It gives you scope. I'm going for an interview. If they say, a few years ago, and I'm not digressing, a few years ago, I thought impatience was a great thing to be honest about. I realized that's the silliest thing I could have ever done, is go and tell an interviewer that I am impatient. It doesn't work. You have to be very, again, objective about what you're saying. What are your strengths? Why will you do the job well? And if you say, I'm the best salesperson because I've had experience in sales, and I was, working in this organization for 4 years, and after I left, and now I'm back getting into sales. They'll say, okay, sell me something. What can you sell them? If I have to think about something, I would say I'd sell you maybe a book. Now, why would I say a book? Because I'm passionate about reading. I would say that I will sell you a book because it's important for children to read. It's important for you to read. It gives you views. It gives you ideas. It takes you away from the stress of life. Now, this is just an example. What I'm just saying is, what I'm trying to say is, if you're asked a question, answer for what you believe and what you know is true. You don't have to be fast. You can say, give me a minute. Let me think about this, because it's important that I stress or I state it correctly for you. So that instant response thing is not really good. Again, I say, listen, think about it, take 5 seconds, respond back. I've also heard people do this very well in interviews, is they say, can I come back to you on this question because I need to think about it a little bit more. Can we circle back on it towards the end of the interview? So you can do all these things to kind of get those interview questions which are painful. But I would stress, please Google some interview questions, see what the kind of questions people ask at different levels for different jobs, and get your thoughts organized around that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, there's another question. We are restarting in IT after a few years. Even if we upskill, we will not be having hands-on experience. How do we convey to the person that we can do the job? Okay, so this is a good question again. I think it's not a matter of you don't have hands-on experience. I think there's a lot of training material available online that you can go and brush up on. IT has specific skill sets that you need. There's coding, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of technical things. I think you need to go and do those courses. Online is a huge tool that all of us don't tend to take advantage of. There are a lot of sites. For example, LinkedIn Learning is a brilliant site. It might require a little investment from your end. It doesn't hurt to go and do those courses. So then what happens when you're going for the interview, you can say, 5 years ago, I worked at this job and I did this. I've been getting myself upskilled. These are new trends in coding, or these are new trends in the IT department and in the IT world, in database management. And I have done these courses and I have been certified in them. So I am ready to relearn or to get into the job with a shorter learning curve. Everyone's always concerned about a learning curve. They always think, how long will it take for this person to upskill? Or how long will it take for this person to learn the job? Right? So I think you should make full use of that. I hope that answers your question on the upskilling part. Okay, thank you. Okay, Shruti, I think there are no more questions on chat. So if you have anything else that you'd want me to specifically talk about?
I will. I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Yes.
So I'm just going to steer the conversation a little towards women in tech, Natasha.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been in this space for a very long time now.
Yes.
So I would want to know, women hold themselves back in the workplace and often believing that they aren't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
When chances are they are as competent as their male peers. Is it true?
Yes.
Who said yes?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's yes and no. And Shruti, I would draw your attention to the question you asked, where you say women feel like that. I think that's the problem. Why do we feel like that? I think I know for a fact I'm competent in certain things. I would rather restate that is that we hold ourselves to a higher bar. We expect we have to be perfect. And I know you'll have heard this. A man looks at a job and says he has 60% competencies is applied. A woman will say, I don't have one competency, I won't apply. True. I think it's just self-belief. You have to realize nobody's stopping you. I have in my 23 years of work, nobody has ever said I can't do something. But when I say I can't do something, they agree with me. So I think that's the change that all of us have to believe we can do the job. And the reason we can do the job is because we know the job, because we are prepared. We are able to balance work and home. We might not balance it brilliantly every time, but we still balance it. And I think that's the conversation that we all have to have with ourselves very honestly, and then with people who, when we're going to apply for roles, is that I can do the role. I know I can do the role. I want the role. I am good because I have experience in these things. I'm talking about this because I've done this previously. Mm-hmm. It's changed the conversation to being more assertive that you can do the job.
Natasha, this is Lily.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Yes.
See, actually, I have 13 years of experience in IT.
Mm-hmm. But
I'm good at doing whatever the task previously I had done that one. Mm-hmm. After my career break, I am going for example, I am comfortable to do project manager role. Mm-hmm. The interviewer asking the question, project manager question means I am able to do properly. But they are trying to get more information about the senior manager role or program manager role kind of questions. Mm-hmm. They are asking me. I am able to understand that it's out of syllabus or that kind of one. Mm-hmm. So at that time, how to react in the interview?
Okay, so again, you cannot join an organization saying I don't want to grow. You cannot join an organization and not give them the idea that you can keep on upskilling and growing, and you're able to be hungry to do different things. So I think step back. Your program management role that you love doing, while that is something that you love doing, you also need to say that while I love doing program management, I can also learn on the job other requirements like being a people manager or leading a project completely by myself, because I believe that this skill set allows me to learn that also. But as soon as you say I can't do something, please understand they want people who can do everything. Any company wants that. You cannot go to any company and say I only want to do one task.
Yeah.
But I think what you need to do is practice. I would ask you what are the kind of questions you should have still have a semi-answer. And I'm right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm giving the semi-answers means so at the time I thought why I was saying I'm not getting it. That's
something. And like I said, where I find more ways of how you to say, yes, body language is important, your body language, their body language. Yeah. But let's try and reach out and take it to another level to understand specifically what you're asking and see how I can help you by either giving you the right experience, or even putting you onto someone else who'll be able to articulate and you can practice with them.
Yeah, that
Practice makes help. Yes, it does. It helps.
Very important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So reach out to me on LinkedIn and let's see how we can connect.
Yeah, please.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Natasha, I think there's a question waiting for you in the chat.
Yes, I'm seeing that. So difficult conversations instead of a one-to-one. If the conversation is to a group of people, any specific tips? Don't ever have a difficult conversation with a group of people. I'm sorry. Majority rules, minority loses. A no-brainer. Don't do it. Walk away. People in groups tend to be more powerful. They tend to be more noisy. So always try and understand who the person is who actually wants to have the conversation. And like I said, tell them, I don't mind talking to 10 of y'all for half an hour. I'll spend 20 hours talking to all of y'all, but I will not talk to y'all in a group. I hope that answers your question. No group conversations.
Yeah, you are right.
Perfect. Okay, Shruti, do you have any more questions for me you think I should cover?
I have a question.
We have a little more time?
Yes, I do have a question. So do women in tech also need to train themselves to use more direct language, Natasha? Like instead of using passive language, like what do you think about doing it like this? Should women, use a more active language, like I suggest we should do it like this? And I think we should also, we need to stop apologizing in the workplace.
Yes.
Have you noticed that?
I do that.
Okay.
I think it's, okay. You're absolutely right. And I think it's not just in tech. I think it's in every industry. I'll tell you what is my observation in tech is that 9 times out of 10, you're very rarely talking. You're more busy working on projects, working on systems, getting things done. Conversations are, have you done it? Yes. I think the direct conversations are very clear. The direct conversations also for any person in any line of business or any field. I can do it. I will do it. I must do it. Trying to say, don't say no. I always say, don't say no. Say, can I think about it? When you're asking for clarifications, the first thing is I say, I'm sorry, can I interrupt you? Don't do that. May I interrupt you? I have a question. Being polite. I think being direct and polite is better than being passive and just passive. So have very clear conversations. Ask. The worst somebody will say is no. Nobody died by hearing no. You know there's a job opening. You know there's a position there. Go and ask your manager. May I apply for this role because I have 1, 2, 3 skill sets? May I apply for the role because I know I'm going to do a good job on it? He'll either say yes to you, which is brilliant. If he says no to you, then you say, why don't you think I'm ready for the role? That starts a conversation with your manager where then he gives you clear guidelines or clear criteria of what you need to do to get into those kind of senior roles, junior roles, or roles with additional responsibilities. So I think having direct conversations in any field is important. In tech, it's more important because you have to be able to rise above the noise. There are a lot of people who are equally skilled. You are not extra special because you have SQL, you have project management. You're equally skilled as somebody else. Then what gives you that edge is how do you present to leaders? How do you convince your teammates to follow direction? How do you take the lead on projects? Do you volunteer to do the work? And do you meet your deadlines? Do you keep to timelines? All these things are something that you need to practice. And this is also things that you need to articulate during your interview with examples. I think it's extremely important to be confident of what your skill sets are and be very clear that I'm good at this. I'll talk about it. I hope that answers the question, Shruti.
Yes, very well. Thank you. Thank you, Natasha. I have one last question, and if anybody else has questions, please type them into the chat, or you can ask them, Natasha, as soon as I finish mine. Natasha, this is just to give, the women who are hearing us a little perspective. Is it important for women in tech to find a mentor? Should it be someone in the tech industry you admire, or is it someone that you share a common connection with? How does one pick a mentor? Is it firstly important to have a mentor in the tech industry?
It is important to have a mentor. And I stress in the tech industry, in any industry, but I think you need to be very clear on what mentorship is. mentorship is not one person fits all roles, or it's not one person fits all needs. First of all, you need to understand what are you wanting to learn. Have you identified that yourself? You want to learn a particular field, you want to learn a particular technical attribute, or do you want to learn a leadership style? Do you want to learn how to be assertive? So you have to first self-analyze yourself, saying that this is what I'm good at, this is what I need to become better at, this is what I really don't have any experience. So identify people who fit that need. Now, how do you identify people then? And I think mentorship can also be done by reading. Mentorship can also be done by following people on LinkedIn. And I'm a great advocate of LinkedIn. I think it's got some brilliant things that you can learn about people. You can learn views. You can learn why people say certain things. What are their ideas around it? And what happens, you can start following people who are influencers and say, listen, you made the statement. Can you clarify? Why do you say that? Put your opinion in and see how people react. So mentorship is extremely important, but don't put pressure on yourself that I have to find this mentor who's going to fix all my woes. First of all, what do you want to get mentored on? That's even more important than before you even ask for a mentor.
Natasha, this was absolutely fantastic. I personally saw a lot of value listening to you today. Does anybody have any questions? Natasha, is there anything that you'd like to share? Probably, any personal experiences you've either seen or heard that would be valuable to our Restarter community who are listening to you?
I really don't know the level of experience of the callers and the people ladies on the call. But I think one thing is I would tell you is that start talking to women around you. Get back your old connections if you've had from your previous work. Start getting into conversations with people. And I know Jobs for Her does a brilliant job on this, because that's one of the reasons why I want to be active. So what happens, reach out, have those connections with people, ask them direct questions. We might not be able to give you answers right away, but I think over a period of time, you realize your confidence in yourself comes by the more you know. Read. Reading is something that is extremely important. There are a brilliant number of books available. Even if you go and just say, top 10 books for women, or top 10 books on leadership, or top 10 books on how to manage work and home, you get some ideas on what people are talking about, why they're saying certain things. And the more you learn and the more you read, I think it makes you more confident. You're able to have those conversations with people. For interviews, please be prepared. I kid you not, I can still go for an interview and I have to be prepared. I actually write down my questions. I write down how I'm going to introduce myself. I practice how I'm going to introduce myself. It's not something that comes just because you're working. It's something that we all don't do consciously. And I think that's the difference. Be prepared. Write down, why do you want to come back to work? Write down how passionate you are about it. Write down why it's important for you to contribute. It could be various reasons. It could be because you have the time. It could be because you've got to look after family. Be honest and open about it. I'm very honest. I work because I have to support my family. My husband and me have 2 children. We both don't work. Who's going to look after them? That's my reason for working. But I also love working. And I think that also needs to come out. So I think for all of you all on the call, please be very clear on your requirements, your needs. Learn to articulate them well. Bring your passion out. Don't say you've not been working. Say you have been working, you've been doing a different job. And I know a lot of people actually say this, but I believe it's true. Managing home is more difficult than managing work, because managing work is a set environment, right? You know what's going to happen. You have at home, who tells you what to do? How do you manage that? How do you multitask? How do you organize yourself at home? You bring those same skill sets back to work. So I think be prepared, be passionate, and be clear on what you want. And please reach out to me on LinkedIn. Like I said, I would love to talk to if anybody will have any specific needs that you can't talk on this call. Whatever I can do to help you, it's always a discussion.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Thank you, Shruti.
Sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you. Thank you, everybody who's participated this afternoon. Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Yes. Thank you very much.